Okay. Okay, Jogo, start.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Already chapter 8 has been started by Abhishek. Okay, and the principle of SOA services. The principle of service orientation. Okay, so these things already been described, and we will continue with each and every services and their principles and how they are correlated with other services, how they are helping. And the case study we will consider here for the TLS and RELCO. Okay, so can you please say the principles associated with our services? Can anyone please voluntarily can please anyone say what are the principles?
Very common principles.
Very
Sir,
common principles.
loose coupling, service contract, the autonomy, abstraction, reusability, statelessness, composability, and discoverability.
Yes, there are the 8 common principles are associated with our service orientation. So any other students? Please say voluntarily. Otherwise, I have to take the name.
Sir, reusability,
Okay.
formal contract,
Okay.
abstraction, loosely coupling, composability, autonomy, statelessness, and discoverability.
Okay. These are the 8 ones. Okay. So now we will consider with our case study H, the TLS and RELCO. Okay. And how the purchase orders and invoice submission services are associated with this service orientations. Okay. So the TLS services are designed to communicate with multiple online vendors. The TLS, the transit line system, it is in such a way it is designed so that it can access multiple number of online vendors and making it loosely coupled. So it is also one service. So making it loosely coupled means so that the service will be less dependent with each other, with minimum number of dependencies. So, and the RELCO services are designed to communicate with only with the TLS B2B system. So RELCO is communicating with a TLS B2B system, business to business system, and TLS is communicating with multiple online vendors. So it is considered also less top. Okay. So here, see, in an organization or any business logic or any application logic, the abstract part is hidden. You are not allowed to know the all documentation or the all description of any abstract. Okay. So there are a lot of underlying logics are there which are irrelevant and invisible to the service requester. Directly it is not visible to the service requester, or also it is not relevant. Service requester want the services, we have to provide the services to them. Rather, unnecessarily explaining the irrelevant contents which are the abstract part of the processing details. So the update account, here you can find the dotted line. That dotted line is here dividing the abstract part and the above side part which is exposed to the service content. The first one is exposing to the service requester, and the main operations with the abstracts are not to be exposed. So the only part of a service is visible to outside world is what is exposed by the service contract through which we are communicating or requesting a service. And the underlying logic beyond what is expressed in the description, data comprise the contract is invisible and also irrelevant to the service requester. Just now I told that these are not relevant. What are the abstract part? It is not relevant. If you will consider the RELCO and TLS in between the invoice submission service and account payable service. So in between these two service requesters and providers, the main abstract is hidden or that is not required. So neither the RELCOS or TLS service requesters require any knowledge of what lies behind the other service providers. The requester don't require, it is irrelevant for him what is the abstract behind it. It needs the service contract, it needs the request what it requires. Now, okay. So then we'll go for the composability. Service, previous one was the service contract, then composability. Service may be composable of other services. Already we have discussed in the previous semester, in this semester also, the composability. So that a small number of formal working units or any small services can be composable to a larger, to find a larger solution. So here it is saying that service may be composed, and this allows logic to be represented at different levels of granularity and promotes the reusability and the creation of abstraction layers. So in the different layers, we are composing the services. One small unit of solution will provide a small one or a small solution. Another at the different level, it will provide another solution. And a composing by level, it will give the final solution. And also it encourages or promotes the reusability technique. And that solution by composability provides the reusability solution. And also it helps in creation of the abstraction layers. The composability is simply another way of form of reuse. You can say it is a form of reuse. Another way, just now I told. At the different levels, we are composing different services, and at the end, we are getting a final solution. And that final solution or that composable service is helpful in our reusability. So, in a simple way, we can say it is another form of reuse. And therefore, the operations need to be designed in a standardized manner. So their operations of reusability should be done in a proper standard manner and with an appropriate level of granularity to maximize the composition opportunity. So that will get an optimized value or result, and that will help us to maximizing the composition or composability. Okay. So the update of everything operation encapsulating in a service composition. You can say, here you can say, different update history. Okay, 3 different update history. All are composing. This will update, and the first one will update, then second one will update, the last one will update, and they will be encapsulated to provide a to maximize the service opportunity. Now, the RELCO order fulfillment service with its one operation. How it is fulfilling with one operation. The order fulfillment service. So it will request and get a response for the process of TLS purchase order, TLS PO. So it will processing the TLS PO. So that will compose the services through it. Now, here another simple example, the composability. So, before accessing to the account payable service, it needs the request, it send a request to the vendor profile service and a ledger service. And composing both the services or composing the updates of both the services of vendor profile service and ledger service, the account payable service will get a maximized composability solution and send it to the requester. Okay, here with account payable services, we have two sub services are also there. These are vendor profile service and ledger service, and both will give the update. And these updates will be composable to a maximized level and will be sent to the request. Then services are autonomous, so that they have the control with themselves. They are autonomous, but still dependable, but the control is with them. Autonomy requires that the range of logic exposed by a service exists within the explicit boundary. Okay. So their service logic within a particular boundary and with their control. And this allows the service to execute a self-governance of its processing. Okay. It also allows the self-governance, the control with itself. Okay, which is governing to itself only. It also eliminates the dependencies. It minimizes also the dependencies and on other services, which frees a service from ties that could inhibit its deployment and evolution. So upon execution, these services have the governance over the underlying application logic. So see here how they are controlling with each other in the dotted boundary. Their own control is with their access of any services, and they will be autonomous and self-governed. Now, this case study with your RELCO. Given the distinct tasks that to be performed. Okay, we know what are the tasks to be performed. Now, the invoice submission service, the order fulfillment service, and the TLS subscription service. And the invoice processing, the first one, which is associated with a model. The process invoice processing and order fulfillment service encapsulate their legacy logic. The invoice processing service will encapsulate one module, and the order fulfillment service will encapsulate both the order entry module as well as the inventory control module. And the TLS notification service or the subscription service will encapsulate the custom components. And the legacy accounts system is also used by the clients independently from the services, which makes the service level more autonomous. Okay. And the TLS notification service achieves the pure autonomy as it represents a set of custom components created only in the support of this service. So how they are independently providing the autonomy to their services by encapsulating different modules. In the figure 8.23, the RELCO services locally encapsulate the explicit portions of legacy and a newly added application logic. Okay, the newly added application logic is here the custom components. Previously, in the legacy system, you have the invoice processing service and the order fulfillment service. And what is added? The new application logic, that is your TLS notification service. Now, the statelessness. Okay, the statelessness means what? Already we have discussed this thing also. It is not retaining the previous credentials. One state, in a particular state you are, you will not retain the previous credentials. What the request will come and you will respond it, then no need to keep any credentials or to retain any credentials of the future use. Now, the services should minimize the amount of state information and the manage and the duration of which they hold it. Okay. State information is a data specific to a current activity. So, state information means in a particular state, you have a particular information and you are performing some activities in a current time. While a service is processing a message, it is temporarily stateful. And once the processing part is completed, then it will behave as a stateless service. If a service is responsible for retaining the state for longer period of time, then it is ability to remain available to other requesters within. So if it will be stateful, then it will retain the state for a longer period of time. It is ability to remain available for other requesters. Otherwise, it will lose or will not retain the previous information or any credentials. The stateless and stateful stages is a service passes through while processing. You can check. The first circuit, when it is receiving a request message, it was stateless. And it was also unaware of the message, what it is coming, what to process, it's stateless. But in the process state, in a temporarily stateful process, it will receive the messages, interpret it, process it, and forward it. And once it is forwarded to the next page, it will just forget the previous information, will not retain the previous information. Okay, so the three phases: taking the request, in the mid it will interpret and process and forward it, and after forwarding it is also not retaining any credentials, so it is again stateless. Temporarily it will be a stateful service. Okay, Vidyasagar, are you online? Hello, hello Vidyasagar, are you able to understand what I am saying? You are online, but you are in a mute mode, but not responding to my conversation. Vidyasagar,
Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar, Deva Bhaiya is calling you.
Yes, sir.
You switch on your mobile.
show your
face.
face. You are
Answer
not
to the-
showing your face at least, and you are not responding to anything. You are not asking anything. How will proceed in this semester? Already you lost one semester without with missing all the classes. And if this semester, if you will be silent in the entire class, how you will go for the exam and how you will clear the subject? If while
Hello,
I am
sir. Am I
asking,
audible?
you are audible, show your face and ask some doubts if you have. And can you please say what is the difference between a stateful and stateless services? What these categories are?
Hello.
Yes, you answer. You answer.
Which
What is
Hello.
the
can
difference
say?
between stateful and stateless? Hello, hello, what are you talking? The demerit of this online class, horrible. Enjoying life only. You have been asked, show your face.
You are muting it, unmuting it, muting it, unmuting. But doing this, you are just covering the class. So can you please explain what is a stateful way and what is a stateless way of a communication?
Yes, sir.
Please
Sir,
explain.
when a communication, we save the state of the communication, then it is a stateful. Like use the memory for that, and if don't uh, don't save the state of the of
Actually, you are not listening sincerely what is taught. That is the biggest problem from your end. You are not very simple things. These things, I am repeating everything twice for your understanding only. But you are taking it so casual. At least listen first and point out or note it the important points. And for a simple answer, if you will take this much time, then how all other things will be managed? If you are asking, come fast, give your reply,
yes,
and
sir.
ask the doubts. It is the proper procedure.
Yes, sir.
And you are joining late. You are
Sir,
you couldn't answer what is the difference between stateful and stateless.
सर वो एक्चुअली इंटरनेट का थोड़ा सा इशू हो रहा है, बार बार
आपका तो
कनेक्ट
हमेशा पंगा रहता है। आप सितंबर से ज्वाइन किए हो ना, आप ही का साथ पंगा चलते रहता है, आप ही का साथ, और किसी का साथ पंगा नहीं होता है। आप ही का पढ़ने की इरादा नहीं है, इंटरनेट के बहाना में कितना दिन आप मस्ती मारोगे?
Every day you have a different issue. Then what you will do in your life? Every day a different issue will come to your life. Every
यस
day,
सर, यस सर,
every day different issue will come. Today internet, tomorrow another issue. Then the laptop will not crash. Then memory is not working. Then power supply is not there.
Why Mahendra Sharma joined at 4:15? Why you joined later? Why? This shows your interest. This shows your interest. Morning shows the day. You have been irregular right from the day one.
Also, you have missed a lot of classes. You should cover it from your end. If you have any doubt, you can also ask at any time.
What are the 8 principles? You should study it. And in that, everywhere that is stateful, stateless, all are involved. What are the 8 principles? All along, Abhishek Bhaiya was telling since yesterday how they are helpful in your SWA applications.
In the service orientation, how they are useful. Can you please say that 8 principles?
यस सर।
Before sitting in this
Sir.
class, you should prepare from the previous class and also prepare what would be taught in the next class.
यस सर,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Only
Everything
tell
is
you
not with
yes,
a
sir.
yes, sir. And yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir. Is it the way?
If we ask to draw that big diagram of 7.1, first 7th chapter, can you draw that, indicating all the how the 8 principles are connected? That big diagram, 7.1.
How they are interrelated? Can you please explain how they are interrelated? Each and every principles. Are you thinking
sir.
that we are taking online class and the exam will be going to be online?
No
It's
sir,
not like that. You have to appear with the offline exam only.
yes
If you are
sir,
thinking that you will take the advantage of online exam, it will be not like that.
This is NIT Rourkela. We will not allow this type of online exam.
For you,
Will
we
not
have to
allow.
appear the offline exam.
And it's a very strict exams are 100% very strict. You cannot do any cheating in exam hall.
You have not appeared the first semester exam, you don't know, and you are forgetting about your sincerity. And
We'll ask that big diagram to draw in the next class. How you will draw? Get prepared. Draw by
Okay,
draw
sir.
and
yourself.
explain. Okay, in the next class you draw and explain.
okay sir,
Okay, sir. Debo, you take that class and ask him to draw those 8 big diagram 7.1. Slide 7.1.
Yes, sir. I will be there and I will ask.
We want to see
Okay, sir.
that you are a right kind of good student, you turn up. We want that. And you are a wrong boy and spoiling everyone, others. You are a spoiler, I find. I watch everybody how much sincere a boy is. Then only this is not an easy subject. This is not an easy subject that you can, this is not history, geography that you can study and do everything perfectly. No, you have to understand by yourself. It's not an easy subject.
Highly analyzing. You have to analyze the subject properly. Highly analyzing subject.
You have to analyze.
Yeah, it is not a historical concept is there. You have to write the story. It's not like that. Highly analyze.
yes sir,
It's not Babur Akbar. It's basic background of cloud computing. Basic background. Okay, Debo. Don't kill
Yes, sir.
time. Okay. Why?
Sir.
Okay.
So previous we just told that the statefulness and the statelessness. The services are how they are statelessness and statefulness. temporarily they behave as a stateful services while interpreting, processing and forwarding. Then after sending to the requester, again it will be a stateless one. Okay. So the next one is your services are discoverable, which helps to avoid some accidental creation of the redundant services or any duplicate services. So that will show you. And these services implement the redundant logic. So it will prevent us and also avoid us any creation of the redundant service or any implementation of redundant application logic. So on a SOA level, the discoverability refers to the architecture's ability to provide a discovery mechanism, how to find the discoverability, and SOA helps to find that discoverability, and it's the ability of the architecture's principle, and such as a service registry or directory. Okay. So a Railco has non-discovery, whereas our TLS has some discovery or inventory services associated with the internal services. Okay. No discovery means there is no storage contents exactly available in the Railco, but there is an internal service registry associated with your TLS, and all the inventories are stored in an internal registry, like your account payable service, their purchase order service, ledger service, vendor profile service, their internal policies, load balancing service, all are connected with a internal service registry. So ultimately, Railco has no such discovery services, but TLS has that facility. Then reusability and their interrelations with other principles. Okay. When a service encapsulates or covers a lot of simple logics or a group of logics that is useful to more than one service requester, it can be considered a reusable. Of course, just previously we discussed that in the level by level, in the level of abstractions, we are composing a set of services, and our intention is to maximize the composability, and ultimately in a different form that composability provides us the reusability. Okay, and this service reusability, how they are interrelated, you can check with different type of principles how they are associated with service reusability. First one, our service abstraction. This is a packages services in support of the service reusability. It provides a package. It provides an encapsulation to provide the support. And service usability primarily enables the service composability. Composability is a different form of reusability. Just we discussed in a previous slide. Then the service loose coupling that minimizes the cross-service dependencies in the support of reusability. It helps to minimize any cross-service dependencies. If any exist, so it tries to minimize the dependencies. Then service autonomy. It provides an execution environment that conducive to service reusability. Means service autonomy means it is self-governed. Their controls are with themselves only, and they are autonomous in the during their execution of the service. Then service statelessness. It maximizes the opportunity for service reusability. Then service discoverability, just now I discussed, it provides a medium for prompting the reusability. So how you check all the principles, various principles are associated with your service reusability or interrelated with your service reusability. Now continue with it. The concept of reuse is supported by a number of complementary service principles or our some common principles. A number of maximum number, and I think excluding the formal contact, all others are associated with it. Okay. So the service autonomy establishes an execution environment. for the execution means for the implementation. It's automatic implementation, and that facilitates the reuse because the services are independent, also self-controlled or self-governed. And the less dependencies as a service has, the broader is applicable of its reusable functionality. Since it is less dependable, then we can say the reusability will be more broader, more broad one. Then the service statelessness supports the reuse because it maximizes the availability of a service and typically promotes a generic service design that defers activity-specific processing outside of service logic boundaries. So it also helps to maximize the availability of a service with the statelessness and typically promotes a general service design that defers the activity-specific processing. The service abstraction, it fosters reuse because it establishes the black box construct. In the abstract means it is a hidden part in a hidden layer. It is reusing with a black box concept. While processing, the details are completely hidden from the requesters. It is not necessarily to provide to the requester. And this allows a service to simply express a generic public interface. Okay. Then the next one is your service discoverability. It promotes the reuse as it allows the requesters to search for and discover the reusable service. How it is helping? Now already discussed that it helps to remove or avoid the redundant services and also to avoid the redundant executable or implementable services. Okay, and also to help with our storing the data in the service registry. The service rules coupling establish an inherent independence that frees a service from immediate ties to change. So it helps in establishing any to minimizing the dependency or to inherent independency, which frees a service from immediate ties to it. Rather, immediately tying to it, it frees it. This makes it a great deal easier to realize the reusability. And the principle of service use itself enables the following related. And also what we are enabling or how it is activating. Now it is activating the service composability. It is enabling the service composability, which is primarily possible because of the reusability. It is possible because of reusability. And the ability for one service to compose an activity around the utilization of a collection of services is feasible when the services being composed are built. So what we discussed, what we come to know from the figure 8.26. So all the services are just providing their support to the service reusability, and the service reusability primarily enables the composability. Okay. Now the service contract, how they are associated. The service contract and its relationship with other principles. The service contract is required to achieve the service composability. It also enables the state of service loose coupling. It also forms the basis of service discoverability and also provides the external descriptions in the support of abstracts. So these are the interrelationship with our service contract. Then a loose coupling. These are some interrelation with considering one service orientation principle with others.
Sir, you are muted, sir. So cannot hear you.
Yes.
Now it's okay.
It's okay.
So automatic ଗୋଟେ କେମିତି ହେଇଯାଉଛି କିଛି net search ହଉଛି କଣ ହଉଛି automatic sir.
Oh, you have not touched it.
No sir, I have not touched any here.
Oh. So, anyway.
Now I am
Okay.
audible, students. Now I am
Yeah.
audible.
Yes, you are audible. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So here, how the service loose coupling, which is another service orientation principle, and their interrelationship with other service orientation principles. Okay. So the loose coupling supports the dynamic composability. Also, it enables the service autonomy so that it will be self-governed to provide the execution of the service applications or application logics. Then the service loose coupling establishes an environment that promotes the statelessness. That is your service statelessness. Also, it minimizes the cross-service dependencies and ultimately it helps for the service reusability. It minimizes the cross-service dependencies. Cross-service means the lot of services are there, 8 services there, and in between their services, if any dependencies are there, it helps to minimize it. Then also, the service contract enables the state of service loose coupling. Here, we will enable it and the service contract or their formal contract of service that enables the state of service loose coupling. Now, the service contract provides an external service description, which is a formal contract for the services. It supports the service abstraction and this abstraction of packages which supports the service reusability. It is an exclusive one with your service contract, service reusability, and service abstraction. One provides the external service description, which ultimately supports the service abstraction, and their packages of services supports the reusability. Now, the service composability with their relationship. Okay, here. How their others are supporting. This service loose coupling, it supports the dynamic service composability. The service autonomy, it increases the quality of composability. The statelessness, it increases the quality of composability. The service contract, it requires to achieve the composability. And the reusability, it primarily enables the composability. Okay. So how composability is associated with other 5 service orientation principles. Now, service autonomy. If you will remember the larger figure, which is the bigger one, all the principles are associated, then it is a sub part of that figure. And their interrelations are also there. You can find it. Now, the service autonomy. Here, the service loose coupling enables the service autonomy. First, it is enabled. Who is enabling it? The service loose coupling. Okay. Now, the service autonomy increases the quality of service statelessness. Okay. And also, it increases the quality of composability. Each thing we have already discussed. What is your service statelessness, their quality, how to be increased, and the service composability and the service reusability. So service autonomy ultimately increases the quality of service statelessness, service composability. Also, the service autonomy provides an execution environment conducive to reusability. Okay. So here all the principles, how they are interrelated with each other. Now the statelessness, the service composability, statelessness, it increases the service autonomy, increases the quality of service statelessness. If you will consider the previous slide, it increases the quality of statelessness, and that service statelessness increases the quality of composability. And also, the service loose coupling establishes an environment to provide the statelessness. And that statelessness maximizes the opportunity for reusability. So these interconnections with different principles are very important. Here, exclusively with our discoverability, service discoverability. The service contract forms the basis of the service discoverability. The service discoverability provides a medium for promoting the service reusability. So these interrelations are very important and their association, correlation with each other. Now, the service orientation and the object orientation. What is the difference in between the SO and the object orientation, object oriented programming or OOP? Okay.
In last
So,
chapter also, Debo, it was there, no? The difference between SOA and object oriented OO. It was
Oh,
there
sir.
in chapter 7. No.
No, sir, not exactly
क्या?
this.
चैप्टर 7 में भी था ना, लास्ट में, चैप्टर 6 में था, कौन सी चैप्टर में था? I remember in some chapter it was there. It was there.
In chapter 7, sir, it was not there. But previous it may be there.
But it was there. In some chapter it was there. The difference between the SWA and object orientation. It was there. Nirmal, it was there in some chapter, I think.
Sir, it's not there in chapter 6 and 7.
कौन सी चैप्टर में था मेरा? रावण कहाँ का राजा था ना, अमेरिका का नहीं था. आंसर सही बोलो, किसमें था? It was there. I strongly remember it was there in some chapter. The difference between SWA and
Sir, in chapter 4 it was there, just some difference. The SOA based and object oriented oriented.
chapter 4.
Chapter 4, slide 58.
I remember chapter 4. So tell me.
Chapter 4,
6 में नहीं था, 7 में था, किसमें था?
Sir, SOA based application and the object oriented application. The difference was there.
Yeah. So
Now the
Nirmal, you are a
difference
good boy, ना? अरे वो पढ़ो. Chapter 5 में नहीं था, 7 में नहीं था, ये आंसर सही तो. Give the right answer. Okay, go ahead. All the time a question usually comes. What is the difference between SWA based system development and object oriented system development? Last semester your assignment was object oriented based. You are developing class diagram and based on class diagram you are identifying the architecture. Now first architecture, then class diagram, then developing the software. Now it will be different. It will be SWA based system development. Your this semester assignment will be SWA based system development. So what you have done in the assignment in the last semester, it was object oriented based, but here in this semester it will be SWA based.
service
so you have
oriented.
to really understand and ask everything. 10 बार पूछो सर उसमें इसमें क्या डिफरेंस है, आप खुद अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए try yourself how this is different, because until unless you prove that it is SWA based, I am not going to give you pass mark P, 30 mark नहीं मिलेगा. So you have to justify, you have to fight. Sir, this is SWA based. This is not object oriented based. Okay? So you try to understand yourself. Okay, Devo, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So here also we have the service orientation and object orientation in the aspect of service orientation principles. Okay. So our object oriented program is a fine way to create the applications and that perform some specific tasks. It is also known to you. And however, it is a terrible architecture for creating some robust network application. So if you will go for some robust network application, so it is very difficult or a terrible architecture for it. So every OOP based architecture for distributed applications like your Corba, DCOM or Enterprise Java Bean, EJB has failed to deliver on its promises and made network programming vastly more difficult than it needs to be. So we have seen it already, what the difficulties you are facing with our object orientation or object oriented programming. So in the service oriented approach, it gives the developers and architects an easy way to integrate the system. So it provides a very convenient way of integrating the systems, and they are far less complex as compared to OOP based architecture. Also faster, more robust, scalable, and easily maintained, and they are also much easier for the designer to conceptualize. So these are the advantages over our OOP based architecture. And does this mean that it is end to OOP or object oriented programming? Good heavens, no, we still need OOP. We still need it. We cannot terminate this or end it from our requirement, but still it is significantly used in few places. So to create these systems, however, we should stay as far away from OOP as possible when creating the interface to distributed applications. So we may not end it, but still we can keep it. But we will try our best, or in a possible way, while creating an interface, we have to avoid it or we have to far away from OOP. And it will probably take several more years for SOA to become common practice across the industry. So it will take a longer time to become a common practice across the organizations and industry. And until then, people will still demand an object-based API for the network applications. Although SOA has a lot of benefits like less complexity, faster robustness, scalability, everything, but still they are demanding an object-based API to the network applications. And it will take longer time or more years for SOA to become a common practice within the industry. And the number of SOA converts has not yet reached a critical mass. Still, it has not reached to a critical mass. So creating object-oriented programming interface still has some value right now. If for no other reason that's what people are expecting. Now, we have a difference with our service orientation principle and object orientation principle in the aspect of the service-based and object-oriented based difference. Indeed, the service orientation owes much of its existence to object-oriented concepts and theory. It provides a look at which the common object orientation principles are related to the service orientation principles we have been discussing. Now, we have the service reusability in our service orientation principle and how it is related with our object orientation principles. This service reusability, how it is associated. First, much of the object orientation is geared towards the creation of reusable classes. They are also geared towards the creation of reusable classes. In the object orientation principle of modularity, standardize the decomposition as a mean of application design. And the related principles such as abstraction, encapsulation, and their support for the reusability are required by a distinct separation of interface and implementation logic. The service reusability is therefore a continuation of this goal. Okay. So for this requirement for the distinct separation of interface and their implementation logic, we are continue with our goal for the service with the service reusability. Then service contract. The requirement for a service contract is very comparable to the use of interfaces when building the object-oriented applications. But much like WSDL definitions, the interface provides a means of abstracting the description of a class, and much like the WSDL fast. Okay, so we are just approaching towards the description of a class when there is a service contract. And much like the WSDL fast approach encouraged with SOA. But with SOA, we are encouraged with the WSDL fast. And the interface fast approach also is considered an object orientation based practice. Okay. Now the service loose coupling. Although the creation of interfaces somewhat decouples a class from its consumers. In the case of object-oriented, the coupling in general is one of the primary qualities of the service orientation that deviates from the object orientation. And the use of inheritance and other object orientation principles encourages a much more tightly coupled relationship between the processing logic when compared to the service oriented. Okay, so object oriented is encouraging a much more tightly coupled relationship, which means it is the dependency is less or they are tightly coupled for the processing logic while compared to the service oriented design. But our service oriented is loosely coupled, less dependency, and tightly coupled means more dependencies. Then the service abstraction. The object orientation principle of abstraction requires that a class provide an interface to the external world and that it be accessible via this interface. And the encapsulation supports this by establishing the concept of information hiding, where any logic within the class outside of what is exposed via the interface is not accessible to the external world. Then the service abstraction accomplishes much of the same as object abstraction and encapsulation. Okay. But our service abstraction, it accomplishes much with the same object abstraction encapsulation, where in the object-oriented principle, it needs a class for providing the external world and to access the interface. Its purpose is to hide the underlying details of the services so that only the service contract is available and other will be hidden. Only the service contract will be available to the requester and others will be hidden. Now the service composability. Object orientation supports the association of concepts such as aggregation and composition. Object orientation also supports the aggregation and composition, but these are within a loose coupled context, are also supported by service orientation. These are in a loosely coupled context also can be supported by service orientation. For example, the same way a hierarchy of objects can be composed, a hierarchy of services can be assembled through service composability. Okay. Now, the service autonomy. The quality of autonomy is more emphasized because it improves the quality of service, the service autonomy. Okay, it is emphasized in the service-oriented design that it has been with the object-oriented process or approaches. Achieving a level of independency between the unit of processing logic is possible through service orientation and by leveraging the loosely coupled relationship between them. The cross-object reference and the inheritance-related dependencies within the object-oriented design support a lower degree of object-level autonomy. Okay, means the last one, the object-oriented design and the cross-object reference Both are support a lower degree of object level autonomy. Okay. Then the service statelessness. The objects consist of a combination of class and data, and that are naturally stateful. And promoting the statelessness within the service therefore tends to deviate it from the object-oriented design. Although it is possible to create the stateful services and stateless objects, the principle of statelessness is generally more emphasized with our service orientation. Then the last one, discoverability. Designing the class interfaces to be consistent and self-restricted. It is another object orientation best practice that improves the means of identifying and distinguishing the units of processing logic. And these qualities are also support support the reuse by allowing classes to be more easily discovered. Okay. So also it is saying the object-oriented best practice improves the means of identifying and distinguishing the processing logic and also improves the quality. But in the service orientation principle discoverability, it is another principle that emphasized by the service oriented paradigm. It is encouraged that service contracts be as communicative as possible to support discoverability at design time and runtime. Now, the native web service support for the service orientation principles, which are main of the native web service support. Very close. The which one? The service orientation principle and their web service support. The service reusability, service contract, service loose coupling, and service abstraction. Then we'll cover another one. First, the service reusability. The web services are not automatically reusable. This quality is related to the nature of the logic that is encapsulated and exposed by the web services. So automatically it is not reusable, but we have to relate it to the natural way of logical encapsulation and they are exposed to the web services. Then service contract. The web service require the use of service descriptions, making service contracts a fundamental part of service communications. Then service loose coupling. The web services are naturally loosely coupled through the use of service descriptions. Then service abstraction. Web services automatically emulate the black box model. It will automatically in the service abstraction. Nothing is, all are hidden and we don't know how it is proceeding and it will be processed through the black box model within the web services. And the communication framework are hidden to all the details by keeping the underlying logic inside it. Next, the service composability. The web services are naturally composable, and the extent to which a service can be composed so generally is determined by the service design and the reusability of represented logic. Then service autonomy. To ensure an autonomous processing environment, it requires some design effort, and the autonomy is therefore not automatically provided by the web service. Now the service statelessness. This statelessness is a preferred condition for web services and strongly supported by many web service extension specifications and the document style SOAP messaging model. Okay, for statelessness. Okay, and then the service discoverability. It must be implemented by the architecture and even can be considered an extension to it to the IT infrastructure. It is therefore not natively supported by the web services. Okay, so we cannot say it is directly supported by the web services. We will check in the next slide who are directly supporting or not. Some principles they are not supported by the web services automatically. The first one, service reusability. You can check. Web services are not automatically reusable. These are the services or the service principles, but they are not automatically used for the service orientation. So the service orientation is not a automatically reusable principle. So first one is your service reusability. These principles are not supported directly or automatically by the web services, and it needs special attention while building the service oriented solutions. And the four principles that are identified as not being automatically provided by the web services, and these are the four web services or the web service principles, service orientation principle. They are not directly or automatically supported by the web services. These are the service reusability, service autonomy, service statelessness, and service discoverability. Okay. Okay. So these are some part of your service oriented principles, and these services are already we discussed, and their interrelationship in between them. These are very important, and how this interrelationship will help for the formal contract and for the service reusability, their loose coupling, and their abstract is also very much important, the abstract of underlying logics. Remember one thing, while we are sending some information or any request or is sending, it is not, it is irrelevant for him to send the abstract. It needs the functionality or requirement. You don't need any abstract or any underlying logic for it. Okay.
Take the attendance.
Yes, sir.
Only 15
Yes.
have joined. Who haven't? Yeah, out of, we have 19 students, I think. 19.
Yes, sir. We have 19.
19. Yeah, 19. So out of 19, only I
15.
know two, Asutosh and Srilekha, they are having some health issues. So two have not joined today. Two students haven't joined. So
Asutosh, sir.
who haven't, who haven't joined? Who haven't joined? You check. You can
Yes, sir.
call the attendance. Yeah, who haven't joined? Check it.
Yes, sir.
Two students haven't joined. I have checked.
Yes, sir. Just a minute.
Yeah, yeah. You have that rule sheet or not, Deba? No.
Sir, in this system, I don't have. In my system, it is. Sorry. Yes.
You keep one. You keep one rule sheet with in your in the system. Tomorrow morning I will give you. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tomorrow morning I will go and give you. Okay.
Sir, you
Two
just
haven't joined.
sir, download kar.
Download I will do that tomorrow morning. I'll go.
Yes.
Okay. I will go tomorrow morning. So all have joined. Only two haven't joined. Forget it. Okay. Leave it.
Yes, sir.
So who two are absent? I think Pratik is absent today. Pratik Jaiswal is absent. One is Pratik Jaiswal. Who else? Who is the other one? Or koi absent hai? Anybody who can tell? Pratik is absent. Why Pratik is remaining little bit irregular nowadays? Why? Anybody can tell? I find Pratik is little bit irregular nowadays. Irregular.
So,
Not showing interest in studies. Some other problem he has, I think. I had a good impression, but he is spoiling himself. He is spoiling himself. To build impression is difficult, takes time, but to spoil the impression takes microsecond or least time. Okay, Deba, leave it. Don't bother
yes.
for the attendance. Leave it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll be meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the lab. Okay, Deba. Bye.
Yes,
Bye.
sir.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Hello.